Great. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Crypto Code Season 2, Episode 2, brought to you by ICN.live. My name's Tom. I've been in crypto for around 5 years now. I have a bunch of experience working with early stage projects and being in Dubai, I mean, it's an amazing place. You get to see some of the biggest companies in crypto and you get to talk to them on a daily basis. And that really gives me sort of some unique insights into the industry that I'd love to share with you guys. So we're going to be talking through some of the biggest news from the past week, some of my views on what's happening across the market and what we're seeing both regionally and globally. So really excited to be sharing all of this with you guys. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow us on our journey. We're really on our journey to become one of the biggest media channels in all of crypto, and we'd love to have you guys along. And guys, please do stay with me to the end because we have some huge news or a really cool thing that I'd love to share with you guys in terms of something that you probably haven't come across yet, but you will hear about in the next few months. So stay with me, find out what that is. Cool. So in terms of agenda for today, we're going to be jumping around a few things. So first off, we're going to be looking at what's happened in the past week with some of the biggest projects, looking at Bitcoin and looking at the top 100. We're also going to be zooming out a bit just before we do that in terms of the macroeconomic scene and how that impacts everything we see in crypto today. After that, we're going to be looking at some specific projects that I'm pretty excited about that had some big announcements in the past week. Think Polymarket, for example, huge announcements coming out of them. And please stay until we can talk through what's happened there and some of the exciting things that's to come for them. After that, we'll jump around in terms of the region, in terms of the GCC. It's an area that everyone is very excited about, and there's good reason why. There's so much going on. They're really positioning themselves as a hub, and it's very important for you guys and for us and for everyone involved in this vertical, in this industry, to keep up with what's happening within the region because they're really doing a great job. And especially, and going into my penultimate point, the UAE. The UAE has really positioned itself more and more as a hub for high net worth individuals, for top companies, for people within crypto in terms of regulation and what they're doing there. So we're going to be looking a bit more closely at what's happening there and some of the most exciting developments in the country in general. Cool. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh yeah, and one final thing. Do stay to the end because we're going to be looking at one specific ecosystem where something very exciting is happening, and I think it's very much worth watching. So stay along, and we'll be sharing more about that towards the end of the show. So let's get into it. First off, let's look at what's going on from a macroeconomic standpoint. So regulations, there's a lot that's been going on there, especially in the US. The Genius Act keeps on improving the scene for stablecoins. Stablecoins has obviously been one of the main narratives that we've seen over the past few months. And it's really cool to see how well the US is positioning itself for it. And it's amazing to see that they're laying a roadmap for these companies to keep building and to capitalize on the hype and the growth that we've seen in the past couple of months. So really excited about what's happening there. Something out of Europe, which is shocking. Europe has been very stagnant whenever it comes to everything crypto for the past few months, for the past few years, really, or maybe even 10 years, 20 years. So seeing them finally start investing and pushing for tokenized assets, Mika is driving a $32 billion push for tokenized assets in Europe. Mika, for those who don't know, they're the main regulators in the EU. That's super exciting. I mean, as a European myself, I was born in France, lived in England for most of my life. It's incredible to see that we're finally moving somewhere. Maybe it's too little too late. Let's see. The UK and UAE are advancing their crypto hub. So UK, I mean, they've always wanted to position themselves as the hub for AI globally, the hub for Web3, but they haven't really capitalized. I think we're finally getting to a point where they're starting to see, we just need to start moving. The UAE has been much better on this. If you've come to Dubai, if you've come to Abu Dhabi and kind of toured around and spoken to some people here, everyone speaks very positively about what's happening here. You'll see, some bunch of chains have set up hubs. So Sui, for example, set up Sui Hub out in Expo City. Polygon have set up a hub with Aglair out in Al Quoz. And there is a bunch more going on. Base have just hired a new country lead. Everyone's very excited, and I've had some private conversations with some of the biggest names across the industry saying they are also planning on moving here and making Dubai and Abu Dhabi one of their main hubs globally. Obviously, the US, there is endless amounts of capital there, and as a tech company, there's a lot of good reasons why stay there, but it doesn't mean that they're sort of ignoring the rest of the world. UAE is kind of like becoming that second main hub for everything crypto and Web3, which is awesome, and it's really cool being here. Cool. In terms of, let's just mention this quickly. The Feds, that's something that everyone always looks at because it's super important. We're looking at a 25 basis point cut in September, well, in October. We had a 25 basis point cut in September. It didn't move the market as much as we thought it would. Obviously, the point of a cut is it's meant to increase liquidity in the market because saving is less appealing suddenly. I'm surprised that they didn't kind of capitalize on the amount of hype that's happening both in tech as a whole. In tech as a whole, people are very excited at the moment, and because of AI, because of all the developments there, because the economy is moving very quickly. Trump has kind of like ignited a little fire underneath everyone. So it's kind of, I was expecting them to cut by 0.5, but no, 25 for now. And it had some effect of stimulation on the market, but I think everyone was expecting a cut, so everything was already priced in. So nothing crazy happened. So yeah, we'll look at very quickly also at what's happening in the market. So there's a lot of cool stuff. You'll see here, Bitcoin, it's a bit down today, but you'll have seen during the week, it hit a new all-time high. It briefly touched 126K, which is unprecedented. And that's an amazing sign. And there's a really cool thing that I want to show you guys that you might not have seen before in terms of what's happening. Obviously, there's been a pullback. It's back at 121K. That's still very high. Let's put that into perspective. Like at the start of the cycle, we were around 60K. So seeing it at 120K, by no means is that a bad pullback. I mean, it's just a slight correction. And this graph really shows it. People still aren't selling. You can see the realization of profits is still far below the actual price of Bitcoin and the price advancement of Bitcoin. This is super exciting because it means institutions, retail, everyone is still expecting a lot of upside. So if you're getting in now, you're not getting in too late. You're not going to see a 30, 40% drop in Bitcoin imminently. We are expecting everything to still keep going through to the end of the year, and institutions and retail has positioned itself accordingly. So that is extremely exciting. Across the rest of the market, on the week, you can see it's been a bit stagnant. Obviously, we had a very good week last week. It happens. You can't expect green weeks every week, except if maybe you were in the bull run during 2021, during 2016. Then obviously you saw kind of different markets. Everything was. It used to be wild back then, but it's much more, obviously, there's much more liquidity, much more attention on markets. People are trading in a much smarter way. You've got institutions coming in with quantitative strategies, which we wouldn't have had, 10 years ago. So, we can't expect the same kind of craziness when there is so much more attention on markets and there is so much more base holding as well. Digital asset treasuries are such a big thing now. BlackRock ETFs, everything, all of those things, they contribute to volatility in some ways, but for the most part, the fact there is so much liquidity and money in the market means it's going to be a bit more stable. So that's something to keep an eye on. Cool. So yeah, I mean, across the rest of the markets, we can see it's been a bit more quiet. One thing that has been very exciting has been Zcash. Zcash is a super exciting project. It is very focused on privacy, and that is one of the main. It sort of kickstarted the privacy meta, if you will. People are very excited suddenly about the fact that it's been one of the main criticisms of blockchain so far. Many institutions and many people cannot trade in crypto publicly because it is so readable. You can see it on the ledger. It's very easy to trace who's doing what. the cool thing about the privacy meta is suddenly people are going to be able to have a bit more privacy. So, I mean, banks, for example, can suddenly start interacting with blockchain a lot more because what they're doing, it can, if they're trying to be competitive, if they're trying to hide some of the stuff they're doing compared to, from their competition, they don't have to worry about that anymore because they can use the infrastructure of Zcash. And on Ethereum, there's a huge project that is, they've been building for 8 years. I was speaking to the team last week at Token 2049 in Singapore. They've been building this amazing tech stack on Ethereum for transactions and everything to be completely private. This is huge. Bitcoin, obviously, that's one thing, but Ethereum is kind of the coordination layer for all DeFi activity across the world. Up to now, it's still by far the biggest ecosystem. If you look at DeFi Llama, and we will in a bit, the majority of TVL is split across Ethereum and its layer 2s. The fact that we can now have a place where institutions and retail can feel safe transacting and interacting with the ecosystem without having to disclose everything they do, that's very important. And that doesn't mean, everyone kind of worries about the criminality aspect of it. It doesn't mean that, criminals are suddenly going to start using it because there is still legal pathways to unveiling these transactions. It just means that the average person can't check what, BlackRock or one of the bigger players in the space are doing. So that's very exciting. Another huge bit of news from the week, everyone would have seen what's happening with BNB. BNB, they have just done an amazing job of marketing. So, I mean, I'm sure you've seen, they flipped XRP. XRP is by far one of the biggest runners of the market. I remember they were around 0.5, 0.4 at the start of the market. They're now around $2 or $3. We'll go back onto that tab in a second. 2.82. BNB has finally flipped it, and that is a huge move. And in large part, it's because CZ has come back. He's marketing the right things. We've seen Aster kind of competing with Hype now. Hype and Aster both being the biggest per platforms in crypto. CZ is now also pushing for memes. And I've seen a lot of posts about this and a lot of people talking about it in terms of memes are a very good means of marketing for chains. Solana has basically, crept back up into the top 10 or done amazingly, almost no better returns on the market in the past couple of years because of memes. Because memes are such an understandable thing. It's high profitability plus, to a certain level, it's IP and something that people can relate with and get excited about. It's something they see that's fun. It doesn't demand too much technical understanding, which often blockchain has the issue of sort of excluding people because it's such a technical thing. If you try to explain what happens during blockchain, it's kind of like trying to explain what's happening in the back end of the internet. No one really knows. 99% of people don't really know what's happening. But when you start introducing things like memes, in terms of, this is something funny that can also make you money, instantly people start relating to it. So BNB are doing a very good job of marketing themselves and pushing on the right hypes. And you can see it in the token price. It's broken a new all-time high. It's flipped XRP, which has angled itself completely differently, looking at institutions and looking at what's happening across the market. And they've got, I'm sure, huge news coming out soon in terms of a lot of people are talking about them maybe going public. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening there. But BNB has done a great job on the retail side and on the institutional side. The digital asset treasuries they've done have been done very well. Probably some of the biggest allocations we've seen across the market. So it's crazy to see a project, come. Obviously, they've got very good distribution because of Binance, and they've managed to do it very well. You look at Base, for example. Base obviously is backed by Coinbase. Their vision is a bit longer term in terms of they want to build a network state, and it's an awesome vision, but they haven't necessarily managed to capitalize as much. And in part, probably because they don't have a token, so the average Joe doesn't necessarily relate to the mission as much. They can't kind of get involved in the same way unless they get involved with the fundamentals in terms of DeFi and the various apps. We will look at Base a bit deeper later in the program. Cool. So looking at another thing that's happening across the markets, let's look at tokenization. BlackRock, Robinhood, and BNY Mellon, they've all made big moves within the market. So you might have seen Robinhood's CEO Vlad Tenev. He declared tokenization is going to eat the entire financial payments world. That is a huge statement. That kind of resonates with what A16Z said back in the day in terms of software will eat the world. Tokenization is really exciting for the average person. So if you're someone who's been interested in startups and been interested in venture capital, and historically that's been a very inaccessible asset class. The average person cannot invest in that because it is so separate from stocks, accessing secondary deals on the equity of companies is impossible. Tokenization of these equities opens a whole different way for us to invest and interact with the world. Suddenly these returns of potential 100,000x's that were pretty much exclusive to private equity firms and venture capital firms. Now it's open to the average person. You can see a business you really like in terms of, this is a startup I'm very excited about. I can see that they're solving a problem for me. Suddenly you can invest in them because their equity is being tokenized. So you can trade them and you can exit it much more easily as well. So it gives kind of two aspects of positivity for the average person. Firstly, they can invest in any startup they want. Secondly, the startup themselves can liquidate some more of their equity and reinvest that capital into their growth. So there's a lot of exciting things happening there. And Robinhood CEO kind of talking about it publicly, that's a very exciting thing to see. The stablecoin market, as I said, there's a lot that's been going on in the stablecoin market for the past few days and past few weeks. Obviously, it's been one of the main narratives this cycle, but I mean, it's crazy to see how much fluctuation and positivity and negativity have come in the past few weeks. I mean, obviously, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about XBL and the performance of the token and the fact that everyone was excited about it. Literally, I think 48 or 72 hours after we posted that video, the token crashed. It's now worth about half of what it was, and everyone was flooding it. Everyone was not excited about it anymore. It's really crazy to see how quickly things change in crypto. For those who don't know, the reason that has happened is there were a huge amount of unlocks for early investors, for the team as well, and clearly they sold a lot of their allocations very early. That's generally not a great sign. I mean, generally when you see investors with a strong conviction in a project and when you see a team who are actually in it for the long run, they hold on to it. But I mean, sometimes there are other reasons for it. I mean, obviously, to a certain extent, you need to be able to liquidate some of your positions in order to grow, to scale, to reinvest into your growth. So there's a lot of reasons why it's happening, but it really goes to show stablecoins, obviously there's a lot of hype around it. We're early. It's very early in the process. There's another kind of aspect of the macroeconomic scene that's kind of been a lot of people are getting more worried about it. Everyone's seen Baron Trump apparently amassed $150 million in crypto over the last few months, and he's been influencing a lot of Donald Trump's ventures and the way he's been conducting his politics around crypto. There's kind of a lot of fear. I mean, obviously, a lot of fear around politicians manipulating markets. I think a lot of people have been worried about, for example, Nancy Pelosi and the fact that she is making ridiculous amounts of money. And there's a lot of copy trading apps out there, essentially giving you ways to look at what she's doing and copy trade her because her returns are unparalleled. Like there is not one hedge fund investment bank in the world that is doing better than her because she sees what's going to be legalized or what regulation is going to come in, and based on that, she makes her investments. She could see, for example, if Microsoft was about to close a huge deal and it needed government approval, in all likelihood, she would be able to see it before it was announced, and suddenly, she's able to capitalize on a 20-30% rise in stocks. That's a that didn't really happen. That's a generic example of what could happen. But the point is, a lot of people are worried about the fact that politicians can manipulate markets. So Baron Trump amassing $150 million in crypto and kind of influencing his granddad's decisions as the president of the United States, that gives him a lot of power to just pump his own bags. And more people are getting worried about that. And I think we're going to see more and more regulation coming around crypto and politicians and regulation as a result of that in the next few, months and years. Cool. Let's deep dive into what's happening into the GCC. So the GCC crypto market as a whole has grown about 17% in the last year. Hits $3.5 billion in it's scheduled to hit $3.5 billion in 2033. There's a huge, for those who don't know the GCC market very well, Saudi has a very young, growing population. It's an amazing consumer market. They're well educated, they know about crypto, and they're a very digital audience. And as a result, crypto has been adopted very quickly there, and it's exciting to see what's going to happen there. So the projections are $3.5 billion by 2033. That feels very realistic. UAE and Bahrain by far are the most kind of progressive in terms of their regulation and ability to create these hubs globally. But that doesn't mean the rest of the GCC isn't adopting it. And we'll get more into the UAE in a bit, because by far they are the leaders. Bahrain is a very small country, but they have always been very progressive towards tech. I mean, in 2016, 2017, when the whole GCC started looking at what can we do within tech, how can we replicate Silicon Valley, how can we replicate these global innovation hubs, Bahrain was kind of the first mover there. Unfortunately, it's just too small a market to have as much movement as the UAE or Saudi, but they are not to be slept on. They are an amazing market. Saudi, in terms of regulatory stance, they still warn retail on crypto. It's not a legal tender. It's really high risk. Banks still aren't going to adopt it for the next few years. But they're starting to make moves. So they're creating sandboxes. They're creating these sort of trials and testing, cross-border operations. And as I said, they've kind of got a big focus on what's happening with the youth and pushing them towards adopting digital strategies. So I do think we're going to see a big move. And I mean, you can see it in terms of like the government and the funds behind the entire scene. PIF invested $620 billion into crypto over the past year. That is an insane amount of money. And if you look at I spoke to someone recently. He's from a hedge fund in the US. He said I don't understand why anyone would move to Dubai or Saudi, because everything's happening in Silicon Valley. If you see what's happening in Silicon Valley, it's all being funded by, or in large part being funded by, family offices and the royal family offices and institutional funds of Saudi and the UAE. There is a huge amount of money being funded into VC from there. So I mean, it's wrong to say that there's not much happening here, because any returns that's happening in the US is also happening here. UAE and Saudi have also positioned themselves as sort of like international players. So anything that's happening in China at the same time, the UAE and Saudi have vested interest in. The way I see it over the next few years, the UAE specifically, it's going to become sort of like a Switzerland, international finance hub for everyone. And that's an amazing thing for anyone who's following what's happening, because it helps them position themselves accordingly, but also for us, because we get a huge amount of information as a result. So we'll look at the UAE in a bit more depth. So the UAE has really solidified itself, and it's official as the #1 most crypto-friendly country globally. This is a stat from CryptoSlate as of the 2025 rankings. And the reason they say this, 9,800 crypto millionaires have relocated here in the past year. This isn't just, over the past 10 years. Everyone is moving here, and the reason is, I mean, very simple. It's great in terms of regulation, very low tax. It makes a lot of sense if you're someone who's trying to figure out how to grow your business whilst also optimizing your fiscal and financial strategies. So it's amazing what they're doing, and I think more and more people are going to be moving here. The 9,800 crypto millionaires, that's just the top kind of like headline, but I mean, underneath that, there's tens of thousands of people moving here because of the opportunity and the energy that's come around. Bybits have become the first crypto exchange to secure a full virtual asset platform operator license from the UAE Securities and Commodities Authority. This is huge. Bybits have long positioned themselves into the market because they understand that it is becoming a crypto hub. Seeing them officially get that first license, I'm sure many will follow, but it's really, they've got the first mover advantage because of that. This really cements the UAE as a sort of global benchmark for transparency. Institutional inflows are going to be huge, and we can really see we can probably expect a 20% volume spike in sort of regional DEXs and ETFs as a result. It's more and more going to become a financial capital for the world. In terms of events and ecosystem, I kind of touched on this already, but I mean, you see more and more ecosystems popping up across the GCC and especially the UAE. Obviously, I mentioned Sui have a hub here. Base have set up a whole team to operate here. Polygon, I know we've got some big announcements in the near future for other chains from people I've spoken to who are going to be announcing that they are sort of relocating the center of their operations to here. And it's really exciting to see what's happening. And we'll, over the next few months, we'll definitely be keeping you in touch with the biggest opportunities that come out of that. Cool. We'll move on to our final point for the day. And this is what I mentioned at the start in terms of what's really exciting. There have been a ton of chains recently kind of trying to come out on top. And I think one chain that is being slept on, everyone is talking about BNB. There is one chain that is equally tied to a huge exchange, which no one is talking quite as much about, who are really focused on decentralization and have a ridiculous amount of apps, and that is Base. Base is an amazing project. You speak to the team, they are fully focused on the core mission of crypto in terms of they're really focused on decentralizations. They want to build a network state in the long run. They're doing the right things. And if you look at things like protocols, the amount of protocols, I've ranked this by protocols. It's slightly behind Ethereum, which is, no one's going to compete with Ethereum. Ethereum's been around for the longest. It's got a huge amount of investment from day one. Binance Smart Chain, we've kind of mentioned, they've positioned themselves really well and they have a very good ecosystem team. Arbitrum, again, been around for ages. But Base, in a short amount of time, have managed to build up 730 protocols operating on their infrastructure. And for those who don't understand why that's important, the more apps you create, the more ways there are for people to interact with a chain. And one of those apps that they've started kind of pushing, also just before I go into that, a bit of a high level of why Base is so incredible, they're tied to Coinbase. Coinbase is the most UI UX friendly exchange in the world. It's an incredible platform. They're doing really well in regulation. They're positioning themselves incredibly. And that means that any of the protocols who build on Base, they suddenly have this immense distribution channel across the Western markets. Base has positioned itself really well across the Western markets. Binance has always been more Eastern markets, and now they're trying to adopt from each other's markets and competing for that top spot. There's going to be a lot of amazing protocols that come to Base. They're going to get this insane level of distribution across millions of people because they're affiliated with one of the biggest centralized exchanges in the world. And one of the projects that I'm very excited about, I'll tell you right now, everyone's been talking about Hype and Aster. Every layer one is soon going to be pushing for their own project. There is one project on Base called Variational. You need to look at them if you want to be exposed to the Base ecosystem in the near future. They've just received $11.5 million in funding, including Coinbase Ventures. The reason this is a really important fact is Coinbase Ventures investing in this project means they have a vested interest in the long run to push for them. Every chain wants a purpose platform because of Hype. Aster is BNBs and BSCs. I really think Variational is going to be the equivalent for Base. And that means, and I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at it, It's the UX UI is amazing. It's very early in terms of users. It's still invites only at this point, so you need to get a code from look on Twitter, look on X for an invite code, and that'll get you kind of the first mover advantage when it comes to the airdrop. You can't invest in a token yet because it's not live, but that gives you an amazing opportunity to get in early, start farming the airdrop, and capitalize on being part of that ecosystem, because we know Coinbase Ventures and we know Coinbase and Base are going to be pushing for this project to match what Aster and Hype have done. And once the marketing engine of Base gets behind it, it's going to be huge. So that's what I'm most excited about for the past couple of weeks. Base as a whole is an amazing ecosystem, and Variational is a project you should look at. It's obviously been a great week across crypto with Bitcoin hitting an new all-time high, and a very exciting time to be involved in this journey. I really appreciate everyone joining us today. This is our second episode of season 2. We really hope to see you next time on ICN Live. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next